So today I'm going to talk about cybersecurity, and I'm going to talk about a couple of key data points and indicators that we're seeing at the moment that I think is quite important for organizations to think about as they start to plan out their cybersecurity strategy. I think one of the problems we see at the moment is that it feels like a lot of organizations are in a giant game of whack-a-mole, and each time we see a major compromise or a major security event, the security industry pivots to respond to that event. Certainly in New Zealand, after the Waikato DHB ransomware attack of a couple of years ago, we saw significant investment from organizations and significant focus on ransomware as a threat. But that doesn't take a holistic view of an organization, and it doesn't allow organizations to create a long-term, sustainable and pragmatic security strategy that enables to keep all of their information safe. And those 2 points I'm going to keep coming back to: sustainability and pragmatism, because it's important for organizations not to go from crisis to crisis or investment to investment, but to think holistically about their information domain and their information environment and apply the appropriate mitigations across their holistic environment. And to do that effectively, it has to be pragmatic and it has to be sustainable. My name is Chris Buxton, and I help organizations make the most of their data and technology enabled opportunities. So to get started, I think there's a couple of indicators that organizations need to recognize them for what they are, what they tell you, and then park them. And they are all about the scale and prevalence of cyber attacks and cyber events globally. So we know the cost of and the impact of cyber attacks globally this year will be just over $6 trillion. Organizations are seeing a cyber attack about every 39 seconds. A ransomware is sent to somebody about every 14 seconds. The average cost of cleanup after a cyber attack is just over $1.4 million. Now, these are all indicators that help you understand the scale of the problem and would help you in a business case or where you're trying to gain investment. But I don't think these are the conversations we should be having as organizations, because I think it drives a certain mindset as we think about these sorts of numbers. Because what starts to happen is when we think about, for example, the cost of cleanup, we start to think about that within the context of a business case, and our objective and the battle we start to think about then as security professionals is not the battle with the adversary to prevent them from gaining access to our systems and our data. It's with our organization to gain sufficient funds so that we can implement the security controls that we want. Now, that drives a behavior then that if you don't get access to the money that you're asking for and your business case doesn't stack up, you don't get the money and there isn't a plan B. Organizations are leaving gaps because they're going in with the methodology that our business case is so large and the crisis is so big, you must give me the money. And if you can't give me the money, well, there isn't anything else I can do. And that's leaving organizations vulnerable. So I think the best thing organizations can do with these sort of statistics is recognize them for the scale of the problem that they indicate and then put them to the side. So I think as we start to think about this, then we need to think about the people, process, and technology indicators that help us think about our response. So globally, when we look at the market around digital investment, we're seeing significant growth. We're seeing in 2017, the figure globally was about 120 billion spent on cybersecurity. By 2024, that is expected to grow to just over 300 billion, and that trend is expected to continue to grow. And those previous indicators around the scale of the problem is creating demand in the market, it's creating that opportunity. Now, there's a flip side of that though. So globally, we know from a people point of view, we are short between 3.5 and 4 million digital security practitioners that are able to support those level of investment. In New Zealand, we know about 1/3 of all cybersecurity specialist roles go unfilled. Now, if we think about that for a moment, what we start to realize is that we are lacking skilled capability and skilled people in this area. So designing our mitigations around a skilled cybersecurity expert isn't sustainable, and it's creating problems for organizations. So a lot of the legacy processes that we see were about a skilled cybersecurity expert doing audits and controls and those sorts of things to make sure that your environment was kept safe and advise the organization what they needed to do. Now the problem is, if you haven't got the guarantee of those experts, what is your other options? Because the vendor community is seeing the same problem. These gaps are occurring across the entire cybersecurity sphere. So our solution to this challenge is to look for the force multipliers. It's look for those scenarios where we can use technology to supplement our workforce and our skill capability, and even more where we could use that technology that has intellectual property built into it to enable us to continue our security defense without relying on skilled individuals. That's the optimum mitigation that we're looking for. Now, my experience there is vulnerability scanning capabilities fall into this very well. They enable us to look at our environments, look at our systems without doing physical audits, and give you an indication of where your vulnerabilities are and where your technical teams need to apply mitigations. And that allows you to work within the constraints of your resource availability where you have any of those challenges. Because what we also know is our adversaries are taking advantage of technology far more effectively than we are. Our adversaries are running their enterprises as a business the way that any other business would, and businesses are leveraging technology through the use of automation and bots to enable them to automate processes, improve the interaction with their customer, and get a better outcome for their organization. So the next real data point that we need to think about, and I think this is quite an important one, is that over a quarter of all internet traffic is malicious bot activity. So that's malicious actors using automation and bots on the internet to carry out malicious activity against a range of targets. Now this is quite an important one, I think, because what it reflects is, in this instance, our adversaries are using automation across an incredible scale across the internet to look at the environment and to carry out malicious activity. And they are running a business, and the interaction with the customer is it's an interaction with their target. So malicious bots can be used for a range of different activities. One of the most prevalent we're seeing at the moment is around credential harvesting and looking for personal information of not necessarily their target, but personal information that could be used or sold on the dark web. Now we know from experience that a lot of people will reuse credentials. We're also seeing at the moment that a lot of the major compromises we're seeing in organization is taking those user credentials. So a lot of bot activity we're seeing at the moment is not only harvesting those credentials so that people can take them away, but also automating the exploit of those credentials. So being able to load those account lists into automated technology so that they can try them out in different systems in different ways to see if they can get a hit and see if they can use them to compromise that system or gain access to more personal information. Now this is quite important, because what we're starting to see in this as well is far more advanced bot technology coming through, where the bot is able to understand the security mitigations that the target has in place as well, so that it's not seen to be a malicious bot that is launching that action. And in that way it's able to repetitively try multiple accounts in multiple ways and not become subject to the blocking action or the control that the security measures can put in place. Now similarly, another action that bots are being used for extensively is to look for opportunities across the internet. In the old world, if a threat actor wanted to attack an organization, they would have to take their vulnerability scanning solution, they would point it at an organization, and that would interrogate their internet facing systems, and they could look for vulnerabilities and look for opportunities where they could apply their exploit packages against that organization. That is now an automated activity. And we know that there is significant activity across the internet. As we know, I've just said 25% of all internet traffic is malicious bot activity. And what a lot of these bots are doing is constantly scanning the internet, looking for vulnerabilities and looking for opportunities. In organizations, we're still relying in a lot of circumstances on a either an annual or a biannual or some frequency of audit or penetration tests against our environments. So these are two completely different tactics. On one side, you've got a relatively static approach with a subject matter expert and a cybersecurity expert carrying out an audit on a regular basis. And on the other side, our adversaries are using continual scanning techniques to continually look at organizations and identify vulnerabilities. Now, they're able to do this as well because these bots equally are becoming more adaptive, and certainly over the last couple of years what we're starting to see is emergence of bots that can work around certain security controls that are put in place. So bots that can understand whether you've got a web application firewall in place, in some circumstances can look beyond the web application firewall and can actually then look at the vulnerable system behind that security control. So these are becoming very sophisticated. So to mitigate this, we need to put ourselves in the mindset of our adversary. If our adversaries are using automated techniques to understand the vulnerabilities in our environment, then we need to think in the same way. If we know we haven't got enough skilled practitioners to be able to understand these results, then we need to build these tools into our ongoing assurance activity to make sure they give a continual assurance over our environment and move away from that point in time audit into a continual assurance framework that continually scans our environments in exactly the same way that our adversaries are. My name's Chris Buxton, and I help organizations make the most of their data and technology enabled opportunities.